My name is Mark Twichell, and we're here today at the Fredonia Mini Maker Faire at the beautiful Science Center here on the campus of the State University of New York at Fredonia. There are about 60 different makers, and they're all scattered across parts of the campus here today. It's a beautiful day, and we're hoping to see a lot of families. This is an event that's very geared to families and education and participation. So I'm here as a maker. I'd like to show some of the things that I've made. I am, first of all, a pediatric dentist, so that my approach very often is from a public health point of view. That's why my display has this Whirligig here, which I'm getting out a message of, health and the responsibility for health. Health is also an issue for the public. A lot of the time that I spent was talking with schools, participating on an outreach vehicle, and getting messages to the population about facts that were important to their health. I built this compressed air control system as a means of communicating with my patients. I obtained a patent for this device, which the attorney has called a device for communicating with people in confined medical conditions, such as sitting in a dental chair or in an operating room table or in a confined long diagnostic procedure. So we're using this today to demonstrate the kinetics of wind turbines, and it's also been useful to me in demonstrating concepts of public health. I also made this what I call the blade pass frequency finder, which is a field kit that you can easily take with you if you are if you live in a wind impacted neighborhood. And by sliding open the top of the box, we can see the chart, a circular chart, and there are 3 blades here that help you to determine what the frequency of the wind turbine noise is. And we're demonstrating the wind turbine frequency noise, which is also called the wind turbine signal, by using this model over here, which is not driven by compressed air, but by 3 C-cell batteries. And then I'm further relating the dynamics of the blade pass. Each time the blade passes the tower, that creates a noise. We call that the blade pass frequency. And then I'm using these charts here to instruct our visitors what that blade pass frequency implies in terms of health in the eyes of the New York State Department of Health and the New York State Department of Public Service. It's a very interactive show. We've had some kids here today that have enjoyed putting together the rotor of the turbine. So I've got here on the table just a selection of parts that they can use, and then we're showing them that by turning on the power plant, they can make the turbine go. The important thing about the turning on the power plant is that it allows electricity to go to the turbine. The turbine is an electrical appliance, and we have 2 wires that go to the turbine, one taking power to the turbine and one drawing the power away from the turbine. I'm making the point that we may know how much power the turbine is generating if the wind speed is appropriate, but we do not know how much power the wind turbine is using in order to generate that amount of power. And we don't know that because the wind industry has refused to tell us that figure. New York State Department of Public Service asked a wind developer to reveal that information, how much power does his machine require. Faire, and the attorney said, no thank you, we don't have to tell you that, and you cannot foil that information. So that is not helpful to the citizens of New York State as electricity ratepayers and as taxpayers. They would assume that the science of power generation and transmission includes a scientific analysis of how much power the wind turbines are generating on a net level. And unfortunately, as New York State citizens, we've been denied that science. We have an incomplete science which might also be compared to a political science. And for that reason, there is much concern. In this community, for example, we're on the campus here in Fredonia. If we were to look out the window, the hilltops surrounding Fredonia are already being wind industrialized. We have one wind facility already in the town of Arkwright, which was recently the site of a class action lawsuit. We have 100 people claiming that they have lost their environmental amenities, and they have sued the wind developer and the various companies that the wind developer has hired to install the turbines and do the environmental impact studies and build the roads. Anybody who had anything to do with the construction of the wind facility is named in the lawsuit, with the exception of the town board and the New York State government. Obviously, they had a lot to do with the permitting of the facility, but they've not been named as, people in the lawsuit. So it is quite a big topic here in Fredonia. We have, as I said, the one wind facility already in operation. There are 2 other facilities planned, and they are going to be as large or larger than the Arkwright facility. So the hills above Fredonia will be quite soundly impacted by these machines and the environmental impact that they bring. And because a large part of my career was spent, in public health, I feel that I have an obligation to, share my concerns with the public. During my career, I came to know many families in the impacted areas, in both here in Chautauqua County and as well as neighboring Cattaraugus County. So what I'm doing here is very much a part of what I used to do as a practicing clinician. Would you like to make a wind turbine? All right. No pressure. I mean, no pressure at all here. Yeah. There you go. All right, you got one.
Does it have to be in all the way?
I think that's about as far as it. Yeah, you really kind of want it, like so. It's mostly in. Oh, good job. You got 2 of them. Bingo. All right. So now you want to take your rotor and you want to put it on top of the tower. That's it. Perfect. Now, how does the wind turbine go? How do you make it spin?
You need air.
You need some air.
Power.
You need power. See, this is the power plant. Turn the power plant on. Very good. Now, pretend this is your house here. How is the power getting from the wind turbine to your house?
The cord thingies are connected to the power plant. And
Yep.
that's also connected to the power plant, and that's
All right, very good. You notice that there's 2 wires going to the wind turbine, okay? So the wind turbine is like an electrical appliance. Power comes in on the metal wire, power goes out on the leather wire. Now, because of, I made one of these, because I'm a maker, so I have one of these down here on the floor, and I can do that too. So what we want to test, what we want to test is if you do yours and I do mine, will we blow the blades off the machine? Let's try it. No, you did a good job putting those blades on, because I've seen those blades go flying.
So what is it that you do?
I'm a pediatric dentist.
Okay.
So my job is very much concerned with public health.
Yeah.
And that's what this is about here.
Oh,
because
I see.
I have spent, countless hours traveling around the county, visiting schools, and serving on an outreach vehicle, the dental van.
Okay.
And so a lot of my time is spent explaining to people, how they can be responsible for their health.
Right.
So this is the Toothbrush Tower here. Maybe you can get it to go.
Love it. Love that.
Uh-huh.
Is that dental floss on the other side?
Of course. What is the connection between the public health that I represent in dentistry and my concern for my interest in wind energy? Mm-hmm. And it is that the wind turbines do have an impact on public health.
Okay.
And that has been confirmed by the New York State Department of Health.
Okay.
And the New York State Department of Public Service.
Okay.
They have recognized that wind turbine noise can be a problem.
Okay.
So up to that point, we're all agreeing. Mm-hmm. But at some point, we're not. Right. And one significant point of disagreement is demonstrated by this machine here. So let's pretend that this is a full size. Have you seen the turbines? They're up in yeah, they're like 600 feet,
So
500.
when we go out to Hidden Valley Animal Adventure.
Yeah, so we'll pretend that it's making noise, but it isn't really, okay? It makes noise that we can hear, right? Because your ear can hear the vibrations that something makes in the air, like my voice is making vibrations and you're hearing it. But it also makes noise that you can't hear. And that's where we're having issues with New York State agencies, because they're telling us that the noise that we can't hear can't hurt us.
Okay.
But they're not. I'll make that more clear here, because first let's measure. How do we measure the sound that we can't hear? All right. Every time, see that blade pass the tower? Okay. The blade is it's gonna swing past that tower. That's called the blade pass frequency.
Okay.
How much sound is created each time the blade passes the tower? If you've ever heard a real wind turbine, they make kind of a whooshing sound that you can hear. All right, that's the audible component of the noise. What about the sound that you can't hear? And what makes that sound? Every time that the blade passes the tower, air gets squeezed between the blade and the tower. Okay, and there's turbulence there. So there's like a little thump that you can't hear. But we can measure it, even though we can't hear it. So this is our measuring device, okay? We've got a simple timer, and we have a graph chart of different sound frequencies. So we're gonna wait for that blade to come right to the tower, and then we're gonna sit go, all right? So we're coming up on our first blade pass. And we're waiting around till it comes around for the second blade pass. Okay, that's 2. Okay, I'm going to round it out to 5. It's a very precise science,
Right.
Okay, so this BPF stands for blade pass frequency. And I want to look on the chart for 5. We just counted 5. Where is the number 5? I believe it's here. Is that a 5? I think it is.
That's an 8.
7, 6, 10, 11. Where did the 5 go? There's the 5, right there. Okay. So The top number tells you what the frequency of that sound is. That's making a sound at 0.186 hertz.
Okay.
Now, we can't hear anything less than 20 hertz. Okay? What is the wavelength of that sound? Every frequency has a corresponding wavelength, but the wavelength depends upon the temperature. So we're going to call it, we're at 68 room temperature. So we're going to take this blade and we're going to turn it to, and we're going to put it on that 5 again, and we're going to measure a wavelength of over 1,000 meters. So that's over a half a mile. One single sound wave is a mile, over a half a mile long. Why is that important? Because the very long sound waves travel very far and carry a lot of energy with them. And they go through walls. Okay? So now we've measured our frequency, but what does New York State, what does our state government say about that noise frequency? I represent public health. New York State represents public health. Are we in agreement? No, we are not. And here's where we start to break down. New York State has given us this figure here, 16 hertz at 65 decibels, right? Now, what we want is the dose response curve. We want to chart another point. For example, what if we measured 4 hertz at 65 decibels? Where would that point be? And that point defines the percent of negatively affected individuals that are listening to that sound. And New York State is using the American National Standard Institute figures. They're just not pulling this out of their hat.
Yeah.
But what we want to know, okay, you've given us 16 hertz at 65 decibels. What if we measured it at 4 hertz? What if we measured it at 0.16 that you just measured on the device? Okay? Why won't they give us those points?
Yeah.
It's just easier for them to say that if we can't hear it, it can't harm us. And they will not look at the studies that show otherwise. And those studies have been conducted around the world.
Are they thinking the benefits outweigh the
Yes.
damage?
Yeah. Unfortunately, collateral damage. Every public health policy implies somebody is going to be disadvantaged.
Right.
You can't have a power plant. You can't have a chemical processing facility without somebody, potentially being harmed. It would be nice if, getting back to this, if they would tell us how much power is going into the turbines.
Right.
Because, we might be willing to say, yes, I could be annoyed, or I might have to leave my house because of the effects of the noise. But if they won't tell me how much power I'm making the sacrifice for, that puts me, in an uncomfortable situation. Let's give your sister's model a chance to see if her model is because yours did really well. So we'll take yours apart so that the next person can have a chance to put it together. Very good. That's how it goes on there. Yeah. Okay. Now how do you make the wind turbine spin? You have to turn the power plant on, right? Okay. So come on over here and turn the switch. There you go. Now, I want to show you guys a secret. You see this box here? This is a control box that I use when I'm demonstrating how compressed air can make things move. So I can do this, or I can do this. And you guys can do the same thing. So this is the Toothbrush Tower here, okay? I'm a dentist, so I'm all excited about instructing people on how to, take care of their teeth and how to stay healthy. So that's why this model is here. Go ahead, you can make that one go. Okay, this thing is called a whirligig. All right, it's a traditional American art form. And a real common kind that you see outdoors is like you ever see the one where the guy's chopping wood? It's a reciprocal motion, okay? What you're doing is this is a rotational motion here, and then it becomes a reciprocal motion. It's an up and down motion here. So that's connected to the arm of the tooth. And always remember to floss, right? Okay. So over here, we have another display. Okay, this wind turbine here is turning in the air, right? Okay. Now, if it were bigger, you'd hear it make a noise, right? Because it's a small model, you're not going to hear the noise here. But how do we measure the noise? If you can't hear a noise, how do you measure it? Well, sound is measured by frequency. So you want to know, what is the frequency of the noise that you can't hear? And that's why I made this kit, okay? And the kit has a handle, so you can carry it with you when you're going out into the field to measure the noise that the wind turbine is making. Okay? You slide the box open like this, and what you have here is a table. Now the timer is set for 30 seconds. So let's go through this and see if we can figure out what sound frequency that machine is making. So we're gonna count each time the blade passes the tower. That's called a blade pass. So I'm gonna set the timer for 30 seconds and we're gonna count. Okay, there's 1. It's very slow. 2. 5. 3. Just checking to see if you're paying attention. 4. 5. Okay. So we counted 5. Now, so what we're looking for is the blade pass frequency, okay? BPF. And we counted 5. So we're going to look at these numbers here and we're going to see where is the number 5. And the number 5 is... The number 5 is here. All right. So the frequency that the noise that it's making is 1.65 hertz. Okay, sound is measured. The sound frequency is measured in hertz, or cycles per second. Right? And when sound is made, it creates waves of energy. And so this is how you can determine what the wavelength is. Have you heard the word wavelength before? Okay, so the wavelength, it depends upon what the temperature is. So if you want to find out what the wavelength at 0 degrees, which is freezing, okay, they use Celsius, which is like we talk about Fahrenheit, but 0 degrees is like 32 degrees. That's where water freezes, okay? But the key point is that the wind turbine gets its power, you're turning on the power plant there, right? Yeah. And it gets its power from the power plant. A wind turbine is an electrical appliance. Notice that there's 2 wires that go to the wind turbine. One wire is labeled...
How are they helping to make electricity then?
Well, what we would like to know is how much power does the wind turbine use? It's an electrical appliance. It uses power to generate power. But it would be helpful as consumers and taxpayers if we knew what the amount of power is that the turbine requires for its function. However,
So it makes more than it uses then?
we'd like to know that. we can assume that it does, but we would, you know, if you were measuring it scientifically, you'd like to express that. We'd say that, you know, for each megawatt of output, it uses, you know, point something megawatt of input. But they're not, that information is proprietary. And the New York State Department of Public Service, on our behalf, since we're the citizens of New York State and they work for us, they asked a wind developer up on the St. Lawrence River in New York State, how much power do your machines draw from the grid? And the wind developer's attorney responded, that's none of our business. The citizens don't need to know that.
That doesn't make sense.
Well, how do we measure the noise that a turbine makes? It's measured obviously in decibels, which is an audible, you know, a decibel is the range within human hearing, but it also makes noise that we can't hear. And that noise would be, you could call that low frequency noise, or you could call that infrasound. And generally anything less than 20 hertz or 20 cycles per second is called infrasound. And the theory that the wind industry is using is that if we cannot hear a sound, it does not bother us. However, there have been multiple studies done in the homes of people living next to wind turbines where they've actually measured this frequency. So we're going to call this frequency the blade pass frequency. Every time a blade passes the tower, that's a blade pass. So the top number is the frequency. That's 0.156 hertz. That's an extremely low frequency. The harmonics of that, 0.33, 0.66, 1.32, and 2.64. Those harmonics, a harmonic is another vibration that the same frequency makes. I'm still working on a better definition that even I can relate to. But anyway, so then we look at the back of the kit, and we see that frequency, the medical reference for that frequency is found at the US Navy did a study that found that frequency of sound is nauseogenic. In other words, it makes people feel seasick.
Oh. So there is effects of these that they aren't telling people about.
Well, actually, they're not totally lying to us. And this is what so far they have told us, and that's over here on these charts. The New York State Department of Health and the New York State Department of Public Service have said that wind turbine noise at 16 hertz, okay, that's a much higher frequency than we're measuring here, but it's still infrasound. At 16 hertz and at 65 decibels will create a percentage of population negatively affected by perceptible vibration. These are the folks who say they can feel a hum in their house, or they can, when they set a glass of water on the table, they can see it vibrating. And New York State is using the American National Standard Institute to verify and justify, you know, that metric. 16 hertz, 65 decibels is harmful. Okay? They also say that, okay, here's your 16 hertz, there's your 65 decibels. What percentage is negatively affected? What we're looking for is a dose response curve. In other words, if you measured at 4 hertz, at 40 decibels, where would that point be? You know, we'd like to see a curve, because that's basic public health science. For any exposure to anything that's, you know, toxic or disruptive to human health, there's always a dose response curve. They've given us 1 point, 16 hertz at 65 decibels, but they haven't given us these points here. What if you measured at 2 hertz? What about 4 hertz? We know that we can't hear 16 hertz. Some people at 65 decibels, however, can. Some people have much more sensitive hearing, and they can hear that.
What about animals?
Animals are, there's a number of animal studies that show that this sound frequency below 20 hertz, the infrasound frequency, can be harmful to animals. That's important to know, because what many people are telling us is that if we are bothered by this noise, it's because we've been told that it's troublesome. It's called the nocebo effect. We've all heard of the placebo effect. The doctor gives you a sugar pill, says you're going to feel better. It works. I'm not arguing about the psychology of placebo or nocebo. If somebody said if you swallow this you're going to have an allergic response, a certain percentage of people will. However, when you enter the animal model, the animals didn't understand what the doctor was saying. The animals don't understand what the health department is saying, and they have responses. So. Everybody, you can only weigh the evidence that's in front of us, and come to your own conclusion based on what your experience is and what your education has been.
Well, that's the thing. We're getting them around here now, but nobody that's here has had the experience, and they go by what other people are telling them.
Right.
So.
Yeah, the experience.
People that are selling aren't telling you the negative stuff.
Well. You understand that if you live as close as that house to that turbine, chances are you're getting paid to have that turbine on your land.
Right.
Or you have signed what they call a good neighbor agreement, whereby you read a form that says you could be bothered by noise at this level, but you will not say anything about it. These are all non-disclosure agreements. So it makes it very difficult to get, to do a public health survey, because people are shy. And if you violate your non-disclosure agreement, they will stop paying you the money. They won't take the turbine away, but they will take, your income away.
Wow.